which originally it was billed as only a San Francisco Astronomy Day because we had a secret surprise in mind. It's also sort of an early celebration for John's 80th birthday, which is actually going to occur on the 14th of this month.
But I was supposed to be born on the 1st.
It'll be the first time you were a little late. You were worth the wait, though. Okay, before we get started, I'd just like to very quickly introduce the president of the Sidewalk Astronomers, who we're very happy and fortunate to have in our presence tonight, Mr. Gerard Pardelian.
I just want to also remark that today, thank you for coming, and today is a remarkable day in history as well. It's the day, of course, that World War II ended. And thanks to that, I think John made some decisions to make an impact on this world, which we're all grateful for. So thanks for coming today, and I hope it's a good program. Bye.
Okay, well, as I said before, I'm awfully glad you're all here, and I'm awfully sorry if some of you didn't get called back. I had about 50 jillion phone messages this week, only a portion of which I got to. Only a portion of which I got to. So if you didn't get called back by me, I'm heartfully sorry. Anyway, my name's Barry Harrell. I'm sort of one of the local guys here in the
Your first officer.
Am I? Thank you, John. Wow. After all I've done, I get a promotion. This is sort of instant gratification. Well, I guess I'm the first officer of the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers. I'm the guy with the big purple telescope who's usually out on the street corner somewhere screaming at people that they really do need to stop and see the moon. And anyway, a long time ago, I got a phone call from my friend Pam in LA, who I've talked to many hours on the phone, but only spent brief moments in the actual physical company of, and I'm awfully glad to finally meet her. Anyway, a long time ago, Pam called me up and said, "Hey, Barry, you know, John's going to turn 80 September, and if we're going to do something about this, we ought to do it in San Francisco." And I said, "Well, that's all fine and good, but you know, John's not much of a one for surprise parties and award ceremonies and stuff, and the best present that we could give John is to do a day for the public, because as John's always said, what you do for the public is something worthwhile. What you do for yourself is a waste of time." So in that spirit, we decided to do something for the public and for sidewalk astronomers everywhere, to give us a day to all get together, and it's wonderful to finally meet some of these wonderful, put a face to some of these wonderful names I've heard so many stories about from John from all over the country, and all of you who have come here to California from parts unknown and parts known. I'd like to welcome all of you. You know, we have Big Bang people, we have steady state people. When you're in California, you're in the unsteady state. So the unsteady state of California. If things start shaking very quickly, the exits are there, and you know, they always tell you to stand in doorways during earthquakes, but the doors slam shut and get you anyway. So just run out into the field there, watch for falling objects. But anyway. Just a few brief announcements to make, and one is that it's all really great to have all you guys here and to see, like I say, the faces behind the names that I've heard so much of. If some of you people are kind of new to the area, or maybe fallen out of the loop a little bit in terms of local San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers event, I'd like to welcome you all back into the fold. And the one little point of discipline I need to put forth is that it's great to have John as a galvanizing force. You know, you put John's name on something and you get calls from everywhere.
In molten zinc.
Anyway, you put John's name on something and people come out of the woodwork. What I would like to ask for people who are in the area or either old-time or new-time sidewalk astronomers, what I would really like to see is that when I put an advertisement in our bulletin that I want to set up telescopes at the Grand Canyon, or that I want to set up telescopes at Mount Shasta, or that I want to set up telescopes for Ronald McDonald House, I'd like to come home and have 45 messages on my machine that night too, even if it doesn't have anything to do with John. So I'd please like to ask you for your help. Because we have have a job to do that not everybody is either willing or able to do, which is to make our telescopes available for the public. As I so often say on the street corner, we put our telescopes where you're most likely to kick them over, in the hopes that you'll actually stop and see something, maybe on the way to get cat food or beer, that you wouldn't actually get to see. And that's where I set up, usually by supermarkets or coffee houses, because those are the things that draw people out of their houses on a cold and windy San Francisco night. And I try and hook them in there. And if anybody in this audience, in this room, or knows of somebody who could be of help in that, retain my phone number and call me up. Like I say, I'd like to have my phone machine blinking with messages, even when it doesn't have anything to do with John's birthday.
681-2565.
Thank you. Most of them already know it, and they're already sick of my message. I'll change the message next week. Anyway, I'd like to thank everybody who volunteered and gave their time today in all the activities that we had. I really couldn't have done it without you. We had a whole lot of support from people from LA and all over who helped us with our activities. I'd like to thank my Project Astro partner, Chris Wilder, who was the lady who made it possible to have those really great light color boxes in the other room there. I hope some of you got a chance to play with those. And she brought those lovely moon rocks from NASA Ames, little itty bitty things, but they came an awfully long way to be with us tonight. So I think they're worthy of some praise, and she's worthy of a lot of praise. She's helped me out a lot. We've done a lot of work getting some kids who otherwise wouldn't have a chance to look through telescopes, a chance to see some things and get some young minds percolating with scientific concepts. So I would like to thank her. I'd also like to thank Tinka for setting up her beautiful portable planetarium in here that some of you may have gotten a chance to crawl into today and look up at the stars in there. We wanted to hedge our bet here with our great California fog bank. We wanted to have a lot of non-weather contingent astronomy stuff. And so she was very helpful in having something that at least we knew we'd see some semblance of stars. And if for some reason I've forgotten to mention your name or what you did to contribute here, it's not because I didn't appreciate it, it's just because I didn't remember. And everybody who did one iota of stuff, my heartfelt thanks go out to all of you. And at this point, as I said, I got 45 phone messages yesterday, but the most important one, I sent a letter off about a month and a half ago to our Honorable Mayor Frank Jordan telling him what was going on. At 4:30 yesterday, I got a phone call from a man in the mayor's office. Hi, Barry. We close at 5 and I have something for you. Can you make it down here? I said, well, I don't know. If I get a ticket on the way, will the mayor sign it off? Anyway, on behalf of the city of San Francisco and our Honorable Mayor Frank Jordan, I have something to present to John here, which is a proclamation, and I'll read it to you. Proclamation, City and County of San Francisco. You can tell it's an election year, by the way. Whereas on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco, I am extremely proud to recognize and honor longtime San Franciscan and sidewalk astronomer John Dobson on the occasion of his 80th birthday. And whereas the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers, founded by John Dobson, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to public service in astronomy, and whereas John Dobson's tireless and unending efforts to bring scientific enlightenment to the public have been documented in many national magazines and television programs, including the PBS series The Astronomers, and whereas John Dobson has brought the wonder of astronomy to the public, simplifying the art of mirror making, enabling thousands to experience the joys of astronomy now, therefore may it be resolved that I, Frank M. Jordan, Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco, commend John Dobson for his inspirational vision of public service astronomy, and do hereby proclaim Saturday, September 2nd, 1995 as John Dobson Day in San Francisco.
All we do is keep the kids on the streets at night.
But at least while they're looking through the telescopes, they're not doing graffiti on the muni buses. Okay, and also we have a very honored guest here. I got a phone call, one of the many interesting phone calls. You know, if you ever want to get a lot of interesting phone calls, put your phone number in Sky and Telescope. I got a very interesting phone call from a gentleman who's with us tonight, Tom Kelly, and he's a resident of our beautiful state of Hawaii. And he called me up and he said, you know, Barry, my parents live on the island of Kauai, and they're the third most western house in the United States. And they have a 13.1-inch Dobsonian, and I think that probably qualifies them as the westernmost Dobsonian telescope in the United States. And I'd really love to be there to celebrate this, because I'm going to be in San Francisco next weekend. And Tom has actually something that he would like to give to John, which is a presentation not only on his behalf, but on behalf of the Osaka Astronomers Guild and the Hawaii Amateur Astronomy Association. Tom, are you here?
Opportunity to be out of Honolulu. My profession is I'm the spokesman for the government of Japan for Hawaii, and this is one day that I didn't want to be in Honolulu for obvious reasons. I can tell you that John has had an impact in Japan that he didn't know. The president of the Osaka Astronomers Guild was visiting me on July 4th in Honolulu. I wanted to show, I have a 10.1 inch, and I wanted to go to the only dark sky area of the island of Oahu. We went and set up, and I didn't think about July 4th. We set up on a roadside laminaria. Great big Odyssey, red and black, looks like a cannon, and all of a sudden 2 blue lights are flashing, going over, and handcuffs are coming out, not on me, but on my Japanese guest. And all the rest of this. And then when he looks at it, he says, what is this about you're trying to look at the stars? He says, I don't see anything up there. He says, all I see is these blurs. And when I do it, he says, oh, I always wanted to see a shooting star. And I just wonder, when Hale-Bopp comes and this kind of thing, what is he going to think that's about? One other thing I want to add. My parents live, as he said, the third most western house in the United States. They're retired, 72, 71. And they set up their telescope at the dry cave of Kauai. It's where Bali High was in the movie South Pacific. Many people believe that this is the chakra or energy point of the world, and that many of the world's secrets are there. We get people from Germany, New Zealand, Australia looking for crystals, pyramids, and the like. So my parents figured they might want to take a look up there and see what's what. So they set up, and then my sister shills coconuts on the side and everything. So therefore, on behalf of the Osaka Amateur Astronomers Guild, and on behalf of the Hawaii Amateur Astronomers, and most of all, on behalf of my mother and her neighbors who made this on Kauai yesterday, it's brought directly, I'd like to present to John Dobson this lei, which is Maili and also Ti, the highest lei for only Ali'i, for the most honored people, to John Dobson for bringing joy to the people of the world to see the universe.
I haven't been in Japan since 1927. And I haven't been in Hawaii since 1927. And there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot the name. Oh, yes. I was going to say that one day when I had the telescope out on Clayton, the cops came and shook everybody down. And I said, what's this all about? Well, there's a report that there's a gun on this corner.
One of the pitfalls of doing this MC gig at this thing was that I knew I'd constantly have to follow John. Anyway, our next item on the agenda is to introduce Bill Scott from the LA Sidewalk Astronomers, and he's going to come up and make some announcement. He's also our club treasurer, a very important person to have around, and he's going to come up and talk about some things. There he is.
We thought you'd just like to know a few general things about what we do in LA and about your dues and so forth. In the last year and a half, we've taken in about $1,600 in dues, and about 2/3 of that has gone towards your newsletter and the postage. We also print out telescope plans and mail those out. Pam Reed's the one that does almost all of that. And we also answer a lot of phone calls, and her phone bill also reflects that, is that she and I and many other people in the LA area help people by phone if they need help. We send the plans out, and then they call us up and say, what do I do next? So that's a lot of what we do. And in addition to the traditional sidewalk astronomer activities of having the telescopes out in sidewalks, we also do star parties at Griffith Park and church and school camps. We give slideshows and talks at libraries. One of our members works at Mount Wilson, and his son is a librarian, and he thought this would be a great activity for libraries, because librarians are always looking for ways to draw people to make their libraries more utilized, because the more people use the libraries, the more they'll be willing to pay the taxes to support them. So we go to libraries. We go to about 2 a week in the fall and winter months, because the libraries generally close around 8, so it's hopeless in the summer. But we get them out, and some of them advertise a lot, and they get a big crowd, so we try to have as many telescopes as possible for those. We also do malls, of course, except some of them have put up so many sodium lamps, it's a little frustrating, but we still manage to see, of course, the moon and the planets. And we also did some projects with helping kids make telescopes. The Rotary Community Corps in the Hollywood neighborhood sponsored 2 telescopes for the neighborhood kids to make. So from 2nd to 7th graders came out, and we made them 2 telescopes that they now use for themselves and their friends. And we're trying to train them up to being good sidewalk astronomers. Then LA's Best, which is an after-school program to give kids something to do whose parents work. There's no one at home to go home to after school, so they keep them after school, give them interesting things to do. They sponsored the making of 2 telescopes, and Nick Pattengale, myself, and Jan Zaremba went to these schools, helped the kids make their telescopes, and one of them tried to have a star party, but it ended up being cloudy. The other school finished it just at the end of the school year, so we're looking forward to arranging something in the fall for them. In addition to that, of course, we sponsor John's classes in telescope making and astronomy for children under 80. We also thought you'd like to know we picked up at least 12 new members today. So and I'll turn the program back over to Barry.
Okay, before I forget, because I've already forgotten one thing here. Before I forget, I've been asked to mention that there's a guest sign-in book near where we're selling T-shirts out in the lobby. So if you haven't already, and you would like to, at the end of the proceedings tonight, after you get your cake and cookie and coffee, please sign your name into the book, and it'll be given as a memento of today. And everybody who is here, in case John, with his, I know his memory's real good, but might just not remember everybody. So if you want to, sign in on the guest book there by the T-shirt counter and pick up a T-shirt. They're really neat. And now I'd like to introduce Pam Reed, who, as I said, was my co-conspirator in this quasi-public astronomy party, also birthday party type thing that we planned here. And Pam has some stuff to say. She's going to come up.
Right now. Right now, she almost runs the Sidewalk Astronomers.
Well, that's not going to be for long. My phone's going to be running off the hook like Barry's with all these people that are going to come out to schools and libraries with us. I just know after this. Bill just asked me to mention one thing he forgot. We are going to try to get some of the 24-inch telescopes back on the road out to the national parks. And John has, is that Delphinium's mirror that we're going to bring back?
No, the Delphinium is still set up the way Gerard set it up, but it's up in Ukiah or somewhere thereabouts.
So this is its sister.
This is, yeah, younger sister. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to try to set this 24-inch up to make it freeway portable and...
you can call it Larkspur.
Larkspur, okay, it's been named. And we're going to start taking it out. Hopefully we're going to start by taking it out to the star party we have the week between Christmas and New Year's at Death Valley, Furnace Creek Ranger Station. And please come. All of you can come, right? Anyway, we're all going to be out there setting up telescopes for the public. And that's kind of getting to be one of our big annual things now. So if you wanted to get back into that action, that's a good way to start. Okay, I made a list of things to mention because I'll forget. First of all, we'd like to thank the Randall Museum. Place, and it's a real treat for us out-of-town people, and they've just been so wonderful. Everything we've needed, they've just gotten, and they're great. And the person I want to thank a lot is Barry. Barry hasn't done much else but this for 3 months. And I told Barry's wife she could have him back tomorrow. Okay, and then we'd like to thank the Sams family. Have any of you heard of Bruce Sams? He was one of the original Sidewalk Astronomers with Jeff Roloff. Bruce couldn't be here tonight, but he has sent a tape, which we are going to play. And Jeff's mom has provided the refreshments for all of us. Bruce's mom, what did I say? Bruce's mom, excuse me. Bruce's mom, Mrs. Sams, King Sams. I don't know if she's in here right now.
Right here behind me.
Okay, so we're going to have lovely cake and coffee afterwards, thanks to the Sams family. And let me see what's
I'd have to say something.
Yes.
Mrs. Sams really started the Sidewalk Astronomer. She called me up and said that Brucey has taken the astronomy class at the Academy of Sciences twice. He's 9 years old. He's taken the astronomy class twice. He's only 9 years old. The San Francisco Amateur Astronomers won't let him join until he's 14. 5 years too young to join. His telescope is bigger than any of theirs. And she said he needs somebody to talk to about astronomy and about telescopes. So I said Jeff Roloff, he also had the same size telescope, and I asked them to establish a club. So then they came to me with names, and Jeffrey had a whole list of names, and he read them all. I said, no, 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 no. About number 7, he says...
Third name. Well, third name. Third name? Really?
That's
Just
Jeff
remembered
right
it.
back there.
Anyway, so we're the we call ourselves the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers, but we're not San Francisco anymore, although we were born here. All of us got born someplace, but we didn't always stay there. And so there's Sidewalk Astronomers all over the globe. There's Sidewalk Astronomers in France, there's Sidewalk Astronomers in Belgium, there's Sidewalk Astronomers in the Philippines, and they're all over the place.
We got one in Israel now, too.
Yeah. Okay, the other thing is, what we're trying to do is get ourselves functioning as, you know, a guy from NASA's Space Center back east, I can't remember his name, wrote us a letter and said, what are you guys? Are you a national movement of volunteers? And I thought, that's what we really are. So what we're trying to do is establish area coordinators in different areas. So we have someone in Eureka now that just recently came into this, and somebody in New Mexico. Somebody that can be the contact person whose name we can list in the newsletter. If you'd like to get involved, call this person in your area. So if any of you are not right from San Francisco and would like to be an area coordinator, I think this is how we're going to get entrenched in different places and spread out. So please see me if you'd like to be listed.
I want to interrupt you again.
Go right ahead.
Since you mentioned New Mexico, we're fighting that New Mexico should become the first national dark sky state. There has to be. There has to be some place in this country where you can go and see what the universe looks like. We want a national injunction against all lights in New Mexico.
Okay, one other thing I did want to mention, and this is a project that's really important to a lot of us. You know, the Dobsonian plans that we had at the counter this afternoon. A lot of us have taken John's classes and kind of felt that we needed something to build the rocker with. You know, John will kind of show you on here, you know. And we used to tease John, these guys need some kind of instructions. So he finally let us put together the telescope plan booklet. And our friend at NASA at JPL saw it and said this ought to go on NASA's Spacelink bulletin board. So NASA has gotten John's permission to put that on the Spacelink bulletin board. And it's going to be available all over the world for free on the internet to anybody that wants it.
What's the address?
I'll have to get that for you. I'm internet illiterate. And the other thing is also they're going to arrange to give us some paper copies, kind of to thank us, I guess, so that we don't have to.
It'll probably come up on Mount Wilson's homepage.
Okay, Mount Wilson's homepage. Thank you.
Actually, if I may interrupt you, Pam,
Yes, please.
I'd like to announce that very soon, perhaps within a year, I would like to
Louder.
I'd like to locate a homepage for the Sidewalk Astronomers on the World Wide Web.
We already have one.
We have a homepage at Lick Observatory, and I may in fact be able to get an address there. So we will have a worldwide homepage for the Sidewalk Astronomers, and then everyone can send in information, and we can coordinate it and keep it on that site for everybody in the world, including, I might add, the Philippines, Sidewalk Astronomers in the Philippines, Brazil, South America, and I believe even in China. So this is where we can go with this. We'll have to work together.
Great. That's great news. Okay, so a lot of stuff is happening, so please get involved if you feel like getting involved. And if you don't feel like, if you don't have time to get involved physically, you can help by joining. That helps too. And let me see, a couple of more things, and I'll let you guys get going here, with the next thing. One thing that's really important to understand, I think all of us know this, is that we do something that most astronomy clubs don't do, or that they do a little bit. That's all we do. We fill a niche that isn't really being filled. So we need feedback from our members.
Let me
Ideas.
interrupt you again.
Go right ahead.
If the amateur astronomers do not solve the problem for the public, no one will solve it. The professionals will not and cannot solve the problem of letting the public see what this universe looks like. If the public ever gets to see what this universe looks like, the problem falls on us.
Here. So send your ideas in. You guys have probably seen the purple flyer with the 1946 Vedanta Place address. That's our new business address for the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers. The state still has us down as San Francisco. We didn't have the heart to take it off. But we are running all of our business through the LA office. So please write in ideas, suggestions. We want to hear from everybody. The newsletter is the tool we're trying to use to link ourselves all together. And if you guys do a public service activity in your town or something, please send us some information we can run in the newsletter. Okay, another thing I want to mention is we've gotten a lot of letters from people that are new that want to have like a little column in the newsletter telling them what they can see with their new telescopes. And Jane Houston, who couldn't be here tonight but has been working on this program with us for months, is going to start doing a column for us. And a lot of our teachers and students and things that are members in LA are going to be real happy about that. Okay, another thing, we do have bumper stickers. They're available in the lobby for $1 and the proceeds go to the club. And we have these fine shirts. I think you've all seen them. Somebody in the front want to stand up and show off a shirt? It says Dobsonian, Schmobsonian on the back, and it's got the logo in
Now I
front.
have to interrupt you again. I always objected to calling telescopes by people's names. And see, I used to say Cassegrain, Schmassegrain, Moxitov, Schmoxitov, Schmidt, Schmidt.
Okay, now this last one is a surprise for John. We didn't keep much a surprise, but we kept a few things a surprise. John, we have sent out 400 letters to astronomy clubs all over the United States, asking them this fall, anytime they like, to do a public service event in honor of your birthday. And already we have had calls from the Abrams Planetarium in Michigan, Salt Lake Astronomical Society, a group in New Mexico. We've had many calls. And we're hoping that they're all going to do something, and we told them to write to you and tell you about it. So I don't know how all that mail's going to fit in that little slot of yours, but... and if any of you are from other clubs, go out there and tell them, we got to do something this fall, public service in honor of John's birthday. See, we use John's birthday as an excuse to get this work done. So anyway, thanks a lot, John. And
We knew that was the one thing we could get for John that he'd be sure to like. Anyway, before we go on with our next phase, I'd also like to give thanks to both the people that were here today who helped us in the construction of this wonderful 10-inch sidewalk telescope. This wonderful 10-inch sidewalk telescope. Through the work of the volunteers that were here today to grind and polish and construct this beautiful, soon-to-be finished telescope, I'd like to give you my thanks and the thanks of the students who will be soon enjoying this. I would also like to give my heartfelt thanks to the San Francisco Amateur Astronomers who generously provided funding for all the stuff we needed to make this. I'm a participant in the Astronomical Society of the Pacific's Project Astro, which is an outreach program going into the schools where we bring science education into 4th through 12th grade classrooms, and sometimes 3rd grade. We stretch the boundaries a little bit. Basically, anybody who'll let us in, we go and provide science education. And this telescope is soon to be viewing the stars over in Antioch with my partner teacher, Lori O'Brien, who's seated way back up in the rafters there. And it's dark now, so nobody will probably see even if you stand up, Lori. But Lori wanted to give her thanks to everybody who toiled away on the telescope today, and to everybody whose contributions made it possible, and all the kids that will be looking through this. They have a wonderful setup over there, pretty good dark sky, darker than ours, and nice, friendly principals who let us set up in the schoolyard and do star parties at night, which is a rare commodity here in the city anyway. So anyway, the telescope that we have here will soon be shining up into the stars over Antioch and giving some children and hopefully their parents their first glimpses up into our universe. And once again, thanks to everybody who made that possible. And now, we have a short film that we're going to view. Some of you may have already seen it, but it was certainly good enough to warrant a second showing here, and many of you may not have seen it. And is Nick here?
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce Nick Pasquarello, the maker of this film, who'd like to say a few words about it before we show it.
It's an honor to be showing this film on the occasion of John's 80th birthday. John introduced me to Mount Tamalpais, for which I am eternally grateful. I have two very brief and favorite anecdotes about the making of the film, or the completing of it. And one is that at the time, I wasn't strong enough to carry the camera on the mountain, and John did it. I'm now a Sierra Club hiking leader. I think I'm more than capable of carrying the camera. The other is that after, John has seen this film, I believe, only once. And his comment, the comment that I remember him making, was that he felt a little bit uneasy that the soundtrack does not reflect what he is saying while the picture was being
He
shot.
has me talking philosophy while we're putting the tailgate in the telescope. I don't think it's like that.
those are my anecdotes. Happy birthday, John.
One other announcement I make just before we show the film is that Nick has especially asked me to ask the people who are videotaping, there's 1, 2, 3 of you, I can see those little red lights. During the showing of the film, we would ask that you turn your video camera off. The film won't come out anyway if you try and capture it on your video. And there is some sort of a copyright infringement here for taking a copy of Nick's film. So I would ask you please, during this portion of the film, to shut off your video cameras momentarily. Okay, you can start taping again. Anyway, the next portion of our program is kind of going to deal with people giving sort of their John story. I'm sure everybody in here pretty much has a John story. The first time we encountered this wonderful individual that we're all gathered here to celebrate. And since I'm the MC, I guess I get to tell mine first. A long time ago, well, it seems like a long time ago now anyway, I was walking down the street with a bunch of young toughs carrying our skateboards and probably had our pockets full of as many Budweisers as would fit in there, going out to find a good time on a Friday night. Now, I had the unfortunate luck to have 2 wonderful, beautiful parents who had the unfortunate luck to die very early in my life. And I soon found myself a ward of the juvenile justice system, which is not a fate that I wish on anybody. And a whole lot of people at all these juvenile court things, deciding what my fate would be and what was best for Barry and all this type of stuff. Well, I thought it was a bunch of crap anyway. What I used to do when I sat in these courts, I was also blessed with an unfortunately bad Irish temper, which didn't go over too good in juvenile court. What I used to do to try and distance myself from the proceedings during all this turmoil in my life was I used to visualize the planet Saturn. And it used to seem, I'd been interested in space and all that stuff. I mean, you grew up as a kid in the 60s, you were into space, it was Apollo, everything. And so I tried to think of the most perfect image that I could think in my mind of just a detached world of peace away from the turmoil that I was finding in my own personal life for circumstances beyond my control. I used to visualize the planet Saturn with its rings and moons orbiting it. I used to just sit there in juvenile court waiting for them to decide where I would live next week. I think about Saturn. It was a lot easier not to get mad at them all and yell and do things that would make my life ultimately harder. Well, anyway, the strange man that I met that evening walking down the street with my gang of young toughs probably had no idea that the person he said, "Come see Saturn," had used Saturn as sort of a personal mainstay of his own psychological well-being. And so I was curious. I mean, you grow up in San Francisco, you learn to expect the unexpected, and usually it's a lot of fun. So I bit. I walked over to these strange-looking things. It did look like they were ready to shoot off a firework cannon or something. I looked in the eyepiece. Lo and behold, there was Saturn. Well, I was hooked. Of course, I was a little bit too busy then to run lock, stock, and barrel into being a hardcore sidewalk astronomer, but I thought to myself, I got to remember this guy. This guy's cool. He's not like any other scientist or professor or authority figure that I've encountered in my life. This guy talked to me like I felt as though I was his equal, and he had information which he was more than willing to share. He explained at length how he made these telescopes out of porthole glass and ground them. This guy was fascinating. So I spent a few minutes there, saw Saturn and a couple other things through the telescopes, and wandered off to resume my adolescence. Anyway, I thought to myself, one of these days I'm going to hook up with that guy. And I tried to remember, it was San Francisco Astronomy something. And lo and behold, I became 18. I rid myself of the trouble of the juvenile justice system interfering in my life. But I did still think of Saturn all the time when I got mad. Saturn was kind of my personal little mainstay there. And there came a point in my life when I decided I've got to look up that crazy guy who makes telescopes out of portholes. Where would I find this guy? Well, I didn't have the good luck to run into him on the street corner anywhere. And so I called up a couple of local astronomy places, ASP and SF Amateur Astronomers. And I said, you know, I met this crazy guy a long time ago. And he makes telescopes out of portholes. Do you know if that guy's still around? He was an old guy. You know, maybe he died. Maybe he When you're 15, everybody's old, right? Nobody seemed to know what the hell I was talking about. So I said, well, I guess I'm not going to find that guy. And I went to a couple of telescope stores and acquired a couple of astronomy clubs. I was living down in Santa Cruz at the time. Nobody that I got involved with seemed to capture my attention the way that man on the street had that one night in just 30 seconds with one glimpse of Saturn. And I said, you know, maybe astronomy's not for me after all. I'm really interested in it. I'd really like to have a telescope, but I don't have $2,000, and I'm not interested in hanging around with these guys who like all this technical stuff. Anyway, my wife, my loving wife, who's actually probably checked most of you in here tonight, knows I owe her 100,000 debts of thanks for putting up with all the stuff I've done with this. But anyway, regardless of that, my wife, being the ever vigilant viewer of TV Guide that she is, said, hey, tonight there's a show on called The Astronomers, and you ought to watch it. It's on Channel 60 at 11 o'clock, but listen, I'm going to bed, so, you know, try and remember to watch it. Okay. So I turned on The Astronomers, and actually we're very lucky tonight to have Peter Baker, the producer of that series, with us, and I've already personally thanked Peter for this. Well, I turned on episode 1, and it was Where's the Rest of the Universe? A couple of minutes into the show, I heard a familiar voice that I hadn't heard in about 15 years. Come see the moon, the whole moon, and nothing but the moon. I immediately ran into the bedroom and shook my wife awake. The little man, he's still alive! He lives here in San Francisco! I found him! So once again, 100,000 thanks to Peter for reuniting me with my long-lost friend John, who I really don't know if I would have made it without him. And that's one of the things I think when we get these telescopes out, you never know that that one kid you stop on the street that's seeing Saturn is going to make the difference, whether that kid cares to go on or not. In my case, it did, and I owe John a debt for that. And every time I pull my telescope out, I'm paying off the interest on that loan. And I'd like to now introduce a integral member of our crack mirror grinding team today, Sidewalk Astronomer from LA, and I've only known him basically overnight, but he's a hell of a guy, Nick Pattingale.
Hello, happy birthday.
I got to interrupt you already. He was in Death Valley, you see, and I had a sun telescope out in Death Valley, and I had to do something else, and so I turned it over to him. Now, I do this kind of thing many, many times. I turn telescopes over to other people, and when I come back, the people have looked and gone, but they haven't gotten any information. But this time when I came back, he was running off at the mouth about the nature of the sun. Now, my gratitude is to you.
The sunspots are coming from that side to your side, from this side to your side. Hey, you took my story. Now, my meeting of John isn't as amazing as Barry's. I basically walked up next to the Madonna Society in Los Angeles, and John comes out. I go, "Hey, you're John Dobson." He goes, "Yeah, who are you?" But anyways, as all of us in this room, we all have John stories. We were up at RTMC, the Riverside Telescope Makers Conference this year in May, I believe, and we were reading a mirror of someone who had a telescope up there. And the sun was going behind some clouds, and what we normally do is we use, if a star's not out, we use the reflection on an insulator of a telephone pole. And for some reason, the sun wasn't quite out, and we weren't getting glints, as John calls them. He said the new saying of the Sidewalk Astronomers is, "We like glints. We like glints." So I couldn't see this glint. Where's the glint? John, where's the glint? Well, the sun's not out. You can't see it. But why don't you read off the telephone wires? So that's the one John story I'd like to share with you. And he's a great guy, and as I go in the next couple years, I hope to... the ultimate goal is MIT, but as I go into the traditional physics world, I'd like to tell John that I couldn't see quite as clearly without knowing that the light from that lamp is an emission event and absorption event adjacent in space-time. And if you've taken the cosmology class, You know what I mean. And to all the people that helped on the telescope today, I've got my 60 grit blister to you. Thanks a lot. Happy birthday.
And once again, we're going to hear from Bill Scott, Bill Scott, and he's a sidewalk astronomer from LA. He's a swami at the Vedanta Society in Hollywood, club treasurer, and he's got a John story too.
The first time I saw John was in 1978. I was living in Lancaster, California at the time, about 60 miles north of Los Angeles. And I was attending the Vedanta Society, and I had decided to join there as a monk, but I had to finish the school year that I was teaching, so it wouldn't be until July. But John was visiting the Vedanta Society in May, and after the Sunday lecture, the bookstore manager said, "Are you going to be coming next Thursday? We've got this special speaker, and he talks on science." And he knew I was a science math teacher, and he said, "You really ought to come." I rarely came in on weekdays because it was like an hour and 15-minute drive in. So I thought, well, I guess maybe I better come in and check this out. And I was absolutely amazed. I mean, I was joining the monastery, but I still had, whenever you make a big decision like that, you still have some reservations. I was kind of joining and not quite sure why I was joining. Part of me wasn't quite sure why I was joining, because I still had problems with some of the things that were talked about, things like the 24 cosmic principles and the 5 elements and the 3 gunas and things like that, which somehow didn't quite make sense when you're a chemistry teacher. And in John's one evening presentation, he just cleared up so many of those problems for me. I was just blown away. After that, I joined, and he came back in January, and he was only there for about 10 days. And the Swami that was in charge of the office at that time, Swami Amohananda, arranged to have all the other classes canceled, and we made John talk, I think, 8 nights in a row straight for 2.5 hours, and we got practically all of his his astronomy for children under 80 in about 10 days straight. We had one couple that drove 100 miles in from Barstow every night just to hear him talk. So through the years, we've had him back virtually every January to give us astronomy class, or at least have some update classes, informal talks and so forth. And finally, after about 10 years of that, he complained, "You people don't use me enough when I'm here." So when I go to Chicago, they have me teaching telescope classes and astronomy classes all over the place. So we decided we better do something about that. And in 1991, we started sponsoring both the telescope making class and the astronomy class. And at that point, I didn't think I was going to make a telescope. Treasurers are busy in January. That's their worst month of the year. But I organized the class and got it going. And I was so fascinated by how these people could turn out a telescope just by grinding these 2 pieces of glass together. It just seemed so ridiculous that you could do something like this. And it seems like every bad event has a good event. That was that year that Linda Strike was diagnosed with cancer. And it forced John to stay another 6 to 8 weeks. And as also luck would have it, there was 1 piece of glass left over after this class. So I asked John, "Can I have this piece of glass as my fee for organizing all these classes here?" And he said, "Sure." So in that period of time, I was able to make my first telescope. So I've been forever grateful for that.
I had to help him grind it though.
Yes, he did. Thank goodness. So anyway, that's my John story, and I'm very, very grateful. And I bring birthday greetings from many, many people from Southern California that couldn't be here. So happy birthday.
Okay, now we're going to hear from Tom Matthews, who's an old friend of John's, which I'm sure the room is full
His
of.
mother is a hot chocolate lady.
All right! Anyone who's connected with hot chocolate is definitely a friend of John's.
Thanks a lot. I started in astronomy at about the age of 10. My parents had bought me a 2-inch Gilbert telescope. It was an incredible telescope, but it had one flaw, and that was the mount was terrible on it. And in the dead of night, when you're out on your friend's brick walkway and the legs fall off, it makes a terrible clanking sound. So at that point, I dreaming of buying a new telescope from one of the local toy stores. 4-inch reflector, that sounded like a pretty big telescope. But a friend of mine, my next door neighbor Rod Post, had been to I think it was the Morrison Planetarium in San Francisco.
His mother's the lady in the pink coat.
That's right, Lee. He said that this guy in a ponytail was handing out flyers on a telescope making class. And they were making 8 and 10-inch mirrors, and he was all excited, and it got me excited. He went to the Jewish Community Center. I couldn't quite make it out there, but we got John to organize a class in, I think it was Pleasant Hill at the local co-op. So I built my first 8-inch reflector at the age of 12. And that was pretty neat, and pretty soon John would come over to our house and help Rod and myself build the telescope. And so after a day of slaving away, grinding and trying to get our mirrors right, we'd go in and watch Star Trek and have purple icebergs for dessert. So anyway, I was really into astronomy, and it wasn't enough that we would stay up at night looking at the stars through our newly made telescopes, but we soon discovered that we could also make sun telescopes. And we could do it day and night and not get any sleep, so it was a lot of fun. But I also had another hobby at the time. I was into AAU swimming, and somehow I ran into John at one of the swim meets, and I found out that all the swimmers knew who he was, but it wasn't for his astronomy, but for his swimming. So it seemed that everywhere I'd go, I'd run into John Dobson. But as I got older, astronomy became a very important part of my life. In fact, now I teach astronomy for Pathfinder Outdoor School. And every once a week I get about 150 students, and we do a huge star party for them. It's just in the tradition. So I think this is something I'm going to do till the day I die, and have John Dobson to thank for that. So thanks a lot. And happy birthday.
Okay.
Say something about swimmers. I learned to swim butterfly by watching Mark Spitz and his friend, right? No, not Sholin. Somebody else. I'm forgetting right now. Anyway, when they were 10 years old, they're 4 feet long, and we lived right next door. The monastery was right next door to Art Hill Swimming Club. And while we were building the wall on our south wall, I was watching these 2 little kids go back and forth swimming butterfly. Well, I learned to swim butterfly by watching those 2 little kids go back and forth swimming butterfly. But afterwards, I used to swim butterfly 1 mile in the morning. 1 mile butterfly in the morning. And Mark Spitz's friends say, nobody swims 1 mile butterfly.
Okay, next up we have Carmen Farmer, who's another friend of John's and has a John story.
Hi, JD. Well, I was at Ghirardelli Square in, must have been 1978, and I was with a person who owned an art supply store who happened to have donated some paint to paint one of John's telescopes, so he knew who John was. And, excuse me, I was planning on voting out of this. I didn't know that they had my name down. I'm a little nervous. Anyway, John said, come look through the telescope. I don't remember him saying specifically what it was, but I'd always been interested in astronomy, but not knowing very much about it. And I climbed up the ladder, and it was Saturn. And I just said, wow. And he said, that's the kind of attitude we like, or something like that. He was handing out flyers for his course, Astronomy for Children Under 80. And I really was interested by some of the questions on the little synopsis there about, of what are stars made, and from hydrogen and gravity to School kids chewing gum. Anyway, so I took the class, and I missed a couple of classes. So the next time I took the course again, and finally made it all the way through, and he started talking about the separation equation and this kind of stuff, and I'm thinking, he can't mean what it sounds like he means. And he was talking about seeing it rightly. And that was something I'd always wanted to do, but I didn't know that anybody had a handle on how to do that. So I called him one day, and he said, there's a Sidewalk Astronomers meeting, why don't you come over and we'll talk later. And we did, and that conversation led to a lot of other conversations, which led to me going on the Grand Canyon Sidewalk Astronomers tour for about a week. And on the way back, we stopped at Ruth's instigation at the Vedanta Society of Southern California. And that's where I heard about my spiritual teacher, 2B, who lives in Portland. And because of running into John at Ghirardelli Square, I live in Portland. I have made a lot of big changes in my life, and I really wanted to be here today to help celebrate his birthday. Thanks, J.D.
Okay, the next one up is Bob Alborzian from Sidewalk Astronomers of LA, who incidentally has the sharpest pocket knife I've come across in the recent weeks, and I'm a butcher, so that says a lot.
Happy birthday, John. It's a pleasure to be here. The first time I met John Dobson was at the Griffith Observatory, maybe circa 1970-71. Nick, you're lucky. He asked you who you are. When I went to help the man, he says, who the hell are you? And of course, if you know John, whenever you see John Dobson, he is either seeking for something, which is eyepieces or drill motor or whatnot, or he is struggling with this huge tube and box, carrying it around. So that's when I met him, and I was going to UCLA at the time. I was helping Mike Simmons, who was the president of the Los Angeles Astronomical Society then, and I was working with him with the 12-inch Zeiss at the observatory. So I came down, and that was the first time I think John had come down to bring telescopes and start the start parties or telescope nights. So I said, look, I'm here to help you. I am who the hell I am. But right now you need my help. So he smiles, shakes my hand, and he says, okay. Then during the course of the next half an hour or so, he's just tossing me around, ordering me, do this, do that, do this, do that. I said, John, I asked you to use me, not abuse me. So ever since, I have seen John here in wherever, Los Angeles or Pomona or wherever John happens to be, I try to make that occasion. And as soon as he sees me, he still says, who the hell are you? But to be very candid with you, I have taken John's classes and also cosmology classes. It has been quite an experience for myself. And in 1991, when Bill Scott and Pam Reed put the first class together for John Dobson's telescope making, I took a few friends with me, and one of them is here tonight. His name is Don, and he's kind of a shy person, and I took him to the society, and he was nervous, so he says, which one is John Dobson? I said, the gentleman in the t-shirt, long white hair and everything. He says, gee, he could use a meal. He says, you sure that's John Dobson, the famous John Dobson? I said, yes, let me introduce you to him. So I take him over and introduce him to John, and I said, look, There is a few minutes. If you like to ask a few questions, you should do that. And I watched in the background, and Donnie went up there and asked John. And of course, John, as soon as he gets to like you, he chews you up and down. I mean, that's his nature. So I watched as Donnie was sweating, you know, and John was chewing him but answering him pleasantly. So when he comes, he was looking for me. Donnie says, "Did you see what happened?" I said, "No, what happened?" But I knew. He says, "He chewed me up and down. I am so nervous, I don't know which way to go." I said, "Then welcome to the club." I said, "That's the true John Dobson. If he gets to like you, you should expect that." So anytime I show up, he immediately throws whatever he has at me. You know. But John, in reality, with the friends you have here and all over the world, and the support we have, these people are great. I met a few of them personally during last night and today. We can't go wrong. If you remember last night when we were at the corner of Broderick and Jackson, the bus driver that came by, stopped by, he got out of his bus, he came and he said, "What are you folks doing?" And I said to him that we are celebrating John's birthday, and these are all homemade telescopes in his honor, his plans and everything. And he looked through the telescope at Jupiter, and he said he had never seen a telescope. Now, this man may have been, 50 years old. And he was so shocked, and he said, "You sure that's Jupiter, or do you have a slide before the eyepiece?" I said, "No, trust me, go look around." And he was so excited. And then when he went and made another route and came back, he had a couple of more people. The third time, he had 5, 6. The last time he came by, it was roughly 10 o'clock, and we were packing up. Fortunately, Barry had his telescope up, and maybe Scott. So he came with a busload of kids. Full bus, you know, and he said, "Where are the telescopes? What happened?" So the legacy shall go on, and with the people you have here, there is no doubt about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me interrupt him first. Jerry Eisenhower down the front here is also going to speak.
Okay.
It's not on the program. Okay, John, now you
All
can.
right. If I didn't care about you, would I take the trouble to scold you?
Well, like many of the people in this room, I know that I've been well scolded, so I'm sure I'm well cared about. Okay, the next up is Neil Feldman, who's another longtime friend of John's. He has a few words to add to.
He comes from Maryland.
Living.
He used to be in Dallas. He got me down there to meet Wheeler, but Wheeler had fled to New Jersey.
Happy birthday, John. I have reminiscences, but I'm going to bypass that because I had a thought after I witnessed last night's incident with the bus driver, which just made me think once again about the two questions that John has always asked us to focus on. Who am I and what's going on here? Now I'd like to throw them on John. Who is he? And what is he doing here? And I'd like to just offer my thoughts because John did something for me, and I think he's done, personally, everybody here I'm sure has very personal incidents. I started out wanting to study physics, but I had these 3 questions about gravity, electricity, and inertia. And they beat it out of me right away, John. And I realized that I can't go into physics because I'm not allowed to ask questions about those things, and that's really what I'm interested in. I ended up studying electrical engineering.
Very good at it.
But I put that thought aside, and actually, I met John during the year of Halley's Comet up in Ganges, Michigan. There's a monastery up there, beautiful site. Couldn't see the comet very well, but I got to know John. And was amazed because here was a man who had the answers to questions that I'd been pondering for 20 years. And I'd like to suggest, although many of you know the telescoping aspect of John, and he's very famous for that, I believe that's not the real lasting legacy of John 100 years from now. It's going to be his profound synthesis and insight into trying to solve this issue of the gravitational nature of the universe, the electrical nature of the universe, and why we deal with inertia. And I just wanted to point that out, and I was thinking, well, who is this guy? The best I can say is he's a combination of Newton, Galileo, and most importantly, Socrates. Because he always works in a Socratic method, and I realized that although I've learned so much science from the man, I've learned something about humanity, about how it must have been when you'd be in the presence of somebody who makes you think, and it's painful. Did it to me yesterday again. You know, I always don't like to be on the spot. You like to think you're smart. And then John just shows you this commonplace, very straightforward stuff. You go, you know, that's just so obvious. It's just so obvious, John. And he knows it, and that's what he's doing out there all the time. That's just the beautiful thing about meeting somebody like John and realizing, no, you can't get this out of a book. You really have to go up to the man, and you have to be schooled. You have to ask him those questions, and you have to hear him ask you those questions. And you have to try to think about them. And although you always want the punchline, it's really not good to get the punchline if you don't try to think and get the stuff in your guts, as he says. So I think that's my little insight into who he is. Now, what's he doing here? That was another thing I worried about. I also had shared a childhood where I was interested, and I had my little 3-inch refractor from Midland Scientific and all that, and I grew out of it. And here's a guy who comes along, and he's saying, you know, you can't look at these photographs, and you can't look at pictures, and you've got to look through the eyepiece. You have to see the universe. And I'm like, well, why is that so important? What's the deal with the photons going in my eye? Why is he around doing this? You know, directly, this experience. And then I watched. First time after we built 2 telescopes in Dallas in a week and discovered a mirror that was half complete and made a sun telescope as well. It's amazing. My cousin took 3 months in grinding a mirror. It was 6 inches, and it was a disaster. I'm sure you know all this stuff. But, here is somebody who is doing something, and I realized what it's about. If you've ever seen the movie or read the book, Dave the Triffids. Yeah. Okay, think about this. Now, Dave the Triffids starts with everybody looking at a meteor shower. It's an amazing meteor shower. They don't understand that something's happened to them after they've watched. And the next day, everyone who's watched the meteor shower is blind. And it's an interesting story because 1 or 2, those few people who, for whatever reason, didn't see the meteor showers basically have to, deal with the usual protagonists. I think they're man-eating plants or whatever. But the interesting thing is this. I think that's the Day of the Triffids. Tells me something about what goes on with the Sidewalk Astronomers and why it's so important about and how different this journey is, because you've got to get those 3 ingredients together. The telescopes, people, and you have to connect with the photons, which don't exist. I learned that from you, John. They don't exist. But you have to see them. And something is going on. And not just those of us who've been moved right away to say, I want to know more about this crazy guy with a ponytail, but those who just walked down the street yesterday and just smiled and said, what a wonderful thing. Or, gee, I've always wanted to do an astronomy course or whatever. And so those of you who know John and know what's going on, it's so important, this magical formula going on and looking at those photons. I don't know why, John. You'll have to explain that. But I understand that it's vital. And I can't do it. You can't do it by yourself. You have to bring somebody, some innocent, seemingly innocent, bystander in to participate in this magical incantation. Thank you so much. And happy birthday.
Okay.
It's my turn again. I think there's somebody in this audience who said to me one time, your grasp of the obvious is outstanding.
Okay, next up we have Jerry Eisenhower, who has a few words to add to our litany of praise here.
Hi, John. Lori says hi, and happy birthday. He's sorry he couldn't make it. He has a scout thing with his kids, so.
That's okay. Made it to Death Valley with his 24.
That's right. I've never met anyone in my life More like John than John. I was told to keep this under 15, 20 minutes. So just be brief. I met him in 1966. I was kind of meandering around a friend's house, and I discovered that he was with a whole group of kids around him over a bench that you use for the picnic, picnic table bench, and they were just going away on these, pushing this glass back and forth. I didn't know what was happening. So I just had to stick it in there and kind of see what was going on, and pretty soon, of course, I was hooked, and he had me grinding two 12-inchers. The deal was, if I grind two 12-inchers, I get to keep one, and you get to keep one. So I started that in 1966, and then kind of piddled around and quit on it somehow, and lost touch and everything, and then I joined the Navy in 70. In 1971, I got out of the military and looked him up and visited him at Bush and Baker there in San Francisco.
When you made the first ones, I was still in the monastery in Sacramento.
That's right.
This was all on the QT that I was out there.
Oh, did I?
That.
Looked a lot like John. Well, I sat in awe listening to this man speak. You know, when you're a kid, I was just junior in high school, and listened to his stories. I just got a picture of this, just kind of sitting on a guy's lap, and just kind of listening like a small child listening to his dad tell all of his yarns. They weren't yarns, but I didn't know that then. And in fact, one story he told us about was about the supernova, and that scientists were now looking to see a little more carefully as to whether or not those were indeed supernovas or just some far-off race that got cocky enough to set off their water. I couldn't sleep for weeks. He says, you know, hear about these people with their atomic bombs, and yeah. But I mean, he made it sound so possible. Is it possible, John?
We don't any longer think it was possible, but Otto Struve, during the Second World War, I think, wrote an article which was in, I forget, Reader's Digest or Atlantic Monthly or something, which I read in a doctor's office. And he said, because one of the bombs apparently that we set off, the nuclear bombs that we set off at the shore of one of those atolls or something, had a bigger yield than they expected it to have. And what they were afraid was that they were fusing the hydrogen in the ocean to helium. And the fear was that the whole ocean might go off like that. And if it did, the Earth would be instantly vaporized and life would be extinct in the solar system. And what he said at the end of that article is that when we see some of these explosions, we have to be a little more careful to find out whether really it's an exploding star or whether some cocky population has exploded its ocean.
I didn't sleep too good after hearing that. A few years ago, about 1990 then, I wanted to get back into the telescope thing. My partner, I got him interested in it, got him kind of hooked on it. And so we started grinding these 24s. And together, we in a few months, we did get it all, push both glasses all the way to fine grind. And so we found out where John was at and flew him down. And unfortunately, it was our apricot tree was in season. So I don't know if you've ever been around John. When he's around a fruit tree, he's like a kid in a candy shop. You just can't get him away from that thing. And of course, he's stuffing everybody's mouth with apricots, and he's got a whole handful of them. They're spilling out, and he's catching them. And, well, I learned a lot more about apricots, too. It'll give you gas. And not just me. Well, that's pretty much everything. I don't know if you, any of you people that know him pretty well would probably remember some of the things like green drinks. You ever heard of green drink?
Green shake.
Yep, peanut butter, celery, banana. And if you didn't have celery, you could find something in your garden. I mean, just go out.
Romaine lettuce.
Huh? Oh, that's right, romaine lettuce. And you can make.
Anyway, I arrived down there on Sunday. We looked at the moon through one of those 24-inchers on Thursday.
That's right. That's right. Yep, just to the bare glass. You could go out into our yard and you'd pick weeds, the things that I've been trying to use weed because they didn't pull, and I quit roundup on him, but all his weeds up, and he was in the kitchen there with a big pot of it, stirring it up. And, I didn't think a little roundup would hurt him after all this stuff. I just want to, in wrapping this thing up, I just want to thank you, John. I think really when I think back of of everything that you've meant to me and the people that you've touched, it's the most important thing is for you who have this ability to send us back to that place in our childhood that it kind of helps us remember to ask why. I think that's pretty much sums it up.
Okay, last but not least in our parade of live speakers, we're also going to have some announcements from people who, unfortunately, for one reason or another, couldn't make it here tonight. But the last in our parade of John stories here is Phil and Lotus.
He's the one who said, "Your grasp of the obvious is outstanding."
It's only a slight misquote. I said to you, John, you have an amazing grasp of the obvious.
That's good.
And I meant it, and I meant it sincerely. It sounds a little funny, but it's true. John has an amazing ability to say things that once you've heard it, it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's so obviously true. But the ability to see those things and state them so simply is simply genius. And I thank you for it. The cosmology class, astronomy for children under 80, is a wonderful thing. I'm going to take it again. And I wanted to say thank you, John. I think that we all owe you a lot. I think that astronomy owes you a lot. All the new big observatory telescopes are on Tasmans. All of them. And not just amateur astronomers, professional astronomy owes you. And you do have an amazing grasp of the obvious. If it wasn't for John and for my wife, who pointed him out to me, my telescope wouldn't exist. John gave me a bit of a dressing down for it, because it's, I believe you said, correct me if I'm misquoting you, said, it's a shame to put so much work into something that will only be used by 2 eyes. And I took that as a challenge, like throwing down the gauntlet. Okay, you made this fancy telescope, now take it out for the people. And I did, thank you. And I do, and I will, and it's here tonight, and I hope the sky cooperates. Just wanted to say thank you, John. I told Barry I'd only take 90 seconds. Thank you.
You hang around John. I had the good fortune to take John along with us to the Grand Canyon this year. And you do discover things like his amazing way to encapsulate things that just never occurred to you to sit down and think about. It just seemed like it was a given, but you had just never given it the thought that he needs. And I said to John, you know, John, you're an observer of everything but the rules. And I think that's important to have somebody who does observe everything but the rules, because sometimes the rules are made by people who haven't taken the time to observe everything. And that's unfortunate but true. Anyway, we do have a lot of people have sent in written testimonials of their personal John stories or anecdotes. And although this doesn't quite qualify as one of those, someone who also couldn't be here tonight, but I don't know, maybe she wanted to, I don't know if it's an election year for her, was Senator Dianne Feinstein. And she had the good fortune to see through John's sun telescope many years ago. And
She looked through the sun telescope when Lauren was 6 days old.
well, it obviously...
There was an eclipse of the sun that day, and it was on the City Hall steps.
Obviously, it made a lasting impact on her. We contacted her office a few months ago and let her know what we had up our sleeve here. Anyway, Senator Feinstein writes, "Dear Mr. Dobson, it is an honor to congratulate and recognize you for your many years of exceptional service to the San Francisco community and to children of all ages. The inspirational service and selfless dedication that you have given to the San Francisco youth demonstrates how a single person can make a profound difference in the lives of others. Your legacy to the community will serve as an exemplary model for others to follow in the future. I commend you for your outstanding record of service and your brilliant achievements, and would like to extend my sincerest congratulations on your day of honor and recognition. I wish you good health and happiness and the best of luck in your future endeavors. Sincerely yours, Diane Feinstein, United States Senator.
The mayor's office paid my first month's rent where I live now.
It's a good thing you didn't live in Golden Gate Park. Otherwise, I don't know if Frank would have picked up the tab there. Anyway, did Jack want to speak also? Okay. And now we're going to have Pam up here again to read some more brief selections from others who wanted to be here but couldn't.
Before I do this, Phil Scott has to catch a plane, so we're going to have him read another very special letter that came from a very special person.
Shall I surprise him with who it is?
Surprise him at the end.
Okay. Dear Mr. Dobson, I am honored to have this opportunity to extend my personal greetings and congratulations as you are recognized for your service to science education and astronomy. As you celebrate your 80th birthday this month, I would like to offer my best wishes and appreciation on behalf of all Americans. Your efforts for the past 5 decades have contributed to much better understanding of the universe and strengthened Americans' commitment to space programs. Certainly your devotion has left an indelible mark upon your colleagues, and I am proud to offer my appreciation as well. Please accept my congratulations on your distinguished career, along with my best wishes for a happy birthday. You have made an important difference for our nation and its people, and I am pleased to recognize you on this occasion. Sincerely, Vice President Al Gore.
Some of you people will know some of these people, and some of you won't. John knows them all. This one is from Swami Yogeshananda. JD, as some of us used to call him in the monastery, is a combination of the Pied Piper and Peter Pan.
We call him Little Jiva.
This is from Little Jiva. He came in from outer space, and that's where he wants to take us. But not really. Don't be fooled. He may also want to take you beyond space. Space is not that which, you know the rest. Beyond where time and space no longer miss the view. And what better way than to stretch and expand your mind and sight out into the cosmos? From there, from understanding the nature of the perception of this apparent universe to the freeing of ourselves from delusion is just a step. That's John's mission, to help us to do just that. And praise God, he's been given a full 80 years in which to do it, with 10 or 20 more for sure to go. He and I were monastic brothers and will be so all our lives. Not only has John been an elder brother to me and a guiding star, but he has been, apart from the Swamis, the most influential person in my adult life. Please take care of him, Swami Yogeshananda. And this is a little poem. Jane Houston very much wanted to be here, but she has a little poem, and we're going to read it, that she sent to John. This is an essay on curiosity submitted by Richard Feynman for a philosophy assignment at MIT. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder. That's the poem. And it says, dedicated to John Dobson in honor of his 80th birthday, with love from Jane Houston and Frank Beatty. Thank you for sparking our wonder of the universe. And we have a letter here from Pat Church Enos. Is that how you Enos?
Of course I know Pat Church.
Okay.
She lived upstairs.
Okay. Dear John, I'm not here in person, but I'm truly here in spirit. You were given an assignment to do, and you did it, and are still doing it with grace, dignity, and humor. The first time I met you was on Mount Tam for the virgin run of the 24-inch telescope.
We were star testing this 24-inch telescope at Boot Jack Camp during an eclipse of the moon, and she fed me a bowl of beans.
Well, we're getting to that. We're getting to the beans. Hold on. This was the first time I saw the rings of Saturn. We fed you vegetables out of my grandmother's garden. You sat around the fire, talked and told stories. I had never heard anybody talk that way before. You piqued our interest, and I was hooked. John, you are a fisherman of people. You were always there for me, and I don't know how to thank you for opening my eyes. But you never wanted thanks. You just wanted me to see, and so many other people to see. Well, now, I do see now, not as clearly as you do, but better than I used to. Happy birthday, John, Pat Churchinos. And this one is from Swami Tapasyananda. John Dobson had very much to do with the all-too-brief golden era at the Vivekananda Monastery when many flowers blossomed for a while. Swami Bhashananda has great regard for John and insisted on bringing him to Ganges, that's in Michigan, along with his scopes. As you know, he arranged for John's visit to India and always supported any program that included John. Bhashananda loves John for his sharp and independent mind, his ready wit, and his ability to so adeptly dispatch unwarranted assumptions. He loves John for opening the skies to everyone, including Swami Bhashananda. He always managed somehow, despite vertigo, to get up the ladder. So on behalf of revered Bhashananda, I wish to heartily congratulate John for what will surely be increasingly regarded as a unique and extraordinary life in the service of knowledge and humans who thirst for it, often at dry holes. Whereas I cannot claim any great passion for stargazing, I have a very deep and sincere appreciation for John and for John's passion to help every man know her place in the cosmos. I regard John's era at the monastery with a kind of misty-eyed disbelief now that it is past. Would that it shall prove to be a recurrent dream and shall recur somewhere once again. Vipasananda. The thing that, I received a lot of these letters at my house, and the thing that continued to amaze me is how multifaceted John is. We all know parts of him, and some of us know many parts, but that's the thing these letters really brought out, and that's why we selected them. Oh, John, this one is from Graham Loftus. Would you like to give the quote, the Graham Loftus quote?
Graham Loftus said, what we need is a big telescope in every village and hamlet, and some bloke there with that fire in his eye who can show something of the glory the world sails in. He was just sitting around the table. He was not trying to make a statement.
Well, Graham wanted very much to be here, but he could not, so he sent this letter. Dear John, birthday greetings. Now is a good time to recall your visit to New Zealand and your first night under these southern stars. The Southern Cross was low, but the Magellanic Clouds were high in January 1988. You will remember how I poked the stem of the secondary mirror into the spider of the square 22-incher, opened a slide and hung the mirror by its central hole on a wooden peg on the cell plate. Slammed the slide shut. You thumped my arm and you said, you and I are the only people in the world who know you can do that. Everyone else knows you can't. We turned the telescope onto supernova SN 1987A. You looked in and moved the eyepiece a little and remarked that the mirror was good. Then, I always like to test on a distant light. I wonder whether anyone else on Earth tested mirrors on it, or on any other world, who knows? I do not know when or where I will meet you again, but my thoughts and my great respect go with you. With the crowds of your friends around the world, I share the gladness of your inspiring work. Love, Graham Loftus. And then, I think this is the last one we have. It is. This one is from Swami Atmalokananda. He's also in Michigan. I've known John for 20 years. When I first met him, he was a monk at the Vivekananda Monastery. I was a monk at the Vivekananda Monastery. John had come for a summer program around 1976 to speak at a weekend gathering at the monastery. It became a pattern eventually. Each year John would come, be a speaker along with the swamis and professors, and in later year do a telescope making program. It was always an exciting time watching John cross swords with religious and scientific dogmas and participating in the frenetic telescope sessions. I worked closely with John throughout those years. Actually, worked is not a good word for it. It was more like a vacation.
He arranged all the programs and he took me to all those places.
Great.
We got back at 2 in the morning.
And he had to get up at 5, right?
I had to get up at 4:30.
There you go. I was also attracted to his early years as a monastic, years he spent with Swami Ashokananda, one of the most undervalued thinkers I feel to come out of the Vedanta movement since Vivekananda. John and I spent hours together, year after year, talking about everything from how hydrogen got to school kids chewing gum, as John would say, to religion and the quest for the eternal and changeless. Another feature of John's visit here were his classes on astronomy for children under 80. Now these were something else altogether. I listened to those sessions many times, year after year, and I always found them fascinating. John has really given us something here, a new way of looking at an old idea. The old idea is divinity or oneness or whatever one may call it, and how it becomes all this. John made a new set of clothes, tailored to and in fashion with the times. Perhaps my fondest memories of those years center around a movie we watched together many times, Man of La Mancha. We fell in love with it. What made it special for us, I think, was Quixote himself, able to see something noble and divine in all that the world calls mundane. In return, the world calls him mad, and he transforms himself and others through that very madness. It's a very touching film. The last scenes hinge on Quixote's death, and with his last breath, he affirms his idealism and faith against the odds. John once commented at this point in the drama, "What a way to go!" Earlier in the film, Cervantes, Quixote's alter ego and creator, defends his life and idealism in the face of his upcoming trial before the Inquisition. In response to a protagonist's insistence that he see life as it is, in all its ugliness, instead of through the imaginations of his mad knight, he has this to say, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. I've lived for over 40 years and seen life as it is. Pain, misery, cruelty beyond belief. I've heard the voices of God's noblest creatures, moans from bundles of filth on the street. I've been a soldier and a slave. I've watched men die slowly under the lash in Africa. I've held them at the last. These were men who saw life as it is, yet they died despairing. No brave words, only their eyes questioning why. I do not think they were questioning why they were dying, but why they'd ever lived. Life itself seems lunatic. Who knows where the madness lies? To be too practical may be madness. To surrender dreams, this may be madness. To seek treasure where there's only trash. Too much sanity may be madness. The maddest of all, to see life as it is and not as it should be. That's the end of it. That speech was always one of the high points for us. It expresses the heart of the real hero, one who toils on in spite of all kinds of obstacles. John reminded me of that kind of person. The world is not always a pleasant place. Its laws seem cruel and unjust. To be acutely aware of this, to feel it deeply with one's heart, and yet to cling with tenacity to a greater truth, that is the sign of the best among us. John, may you ever tilt at windmills and champion the righteous and true, and gallop into the sunset with a triumphant shout. Happy birthday, Baba.
It's really neat seeing all these people from all over and hearing their thoughts on John. And it makes me think of one very special person who, for circumstances beyond anybody's control, can't be here with us tonight. I only knew Linda Strite briefly. I met her one time down at the Illuminizer stand in San Carlos at Bob Fee's house. I wanted to take a picture of her and John together. I said, "Come on, you guys, come over here. I want to take your picture." Because people are important, more important than telescopes. Instantly, Linda turned to me and said, "You're an astronomer I like." Anyway, I'm sure Linda would just loved this event. I looked around at all the smiling faces today, and I just really wish Linda could be here. And I think sort of as a tribute to her, we're at Sidewalk Astronomers are awfully fond of naming our telescopes, and we created a beautiful telescope today. And being my newly found power as first officer of the San Francisco Sidewalk Astronomers, I'm taking it on myself to christen our newest addition to the Sidewalk Astronomer photon artillery range here, Linda. And what better way to dedicate a telescope with, hopefully, if the fog hasn't is cooperating with us, hopefully we'll christen it with the moon. But otherwise, I think Jerry's T-shirt here, the Silver Surfer, kind of gave me inspiration. Love is the power supreme. And in Linda's memory, I'd like to christen this telescope with a big hug and a kiss and call it Linda. Now we have a tape that we would like to play.
Oh, wait, we have to have Jeff come up first.
Oh, okay. Oh,
We
Jeff.
have a live person.
That's right. I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead here. We have Jeff Roloff, who coined the term sidewalk astronomers. Damn good name. And he has words to say.
Watch it.
You're in for it. This all started for me Thursday afternoon when John called me at work and told me there was this gathering here. It was going to be the largest gathering of sidewalk astronomers it's ever been. And okay, I gotta go. And I'm really delighted that Linda asked me to try to come up with some of the remembrances of things that happened in the early years, because it occurs to me that some of those things may not be in the stories that John is telling, and you might be interested. One of the things that he alluded to, and some of these stories I know have gone around, and some of the stories may not have, in the early days, the other astronomers really didn't like these things. In the early days, the Vedics didn't like the fact that he was doing telescopes. On the QT thing, he used to grind near the monastery underwater, and it was funny because the other astronomy people were saying there's this crazy monk up there grinding underwater, and he was doing it so that he wouldn't be hurt, because they were worried that he was off the campus and not being on there. It was in the monastery we were doing that. This story comes from before my time, so I'm willing to accept a little correction. The whole thing with Brucey, and I will try very hard to never call him Brucey again, but my memory has him being a 15-year-old the last time I saw him.
He's big enough to slash you against the wall.
Yeah, I know. And he's a graduate researcher who's about to become a professor someplace, and he should be Professor Sams, not Brucey. But his telescope was huge compared to anything that the San Francisco Amateur Astronomers have, and they didn't want to have anything to do with him being in their organization. And I think the 9-year-old thing was an excuse. These things don't have equatorial drives, they don't have motors, they're not made by machinery. And everybody in the world knew that in order to grind a 6-inch telescope, it took at least 40 hours. And we just proved again and again and again that it certainly doesn't take 40 hours if you put your back into it. And just simplify it a little bit. So the whole thing started, this whole group started with, and John is right, John asked me if I would start an organization with Bruce to start doing exactly what we had been doing for I don't know how long. And in truth, there were only 2 of us in the club for a long time. I mean, it's hard to think of John as not part of the Sidewalk Astronomers, but he deliberately wouldn't be a member. It took about a month before I forced him to let me make him an honorary member, and he's always been the leader, but in the early days, it was important that he not be part of it. He can explain that sometime. Let's see.
When he explains it, it'll be obvious.
It most certainly will. Let's see. I met John in front of the Urban School on Washington Street, and I forget if it was with the telescope or with the sun telescope. I think it was the sun telescope. And very shortly thereafter, I was making a 10.5-inch telescope. We were doing them in pairs with a...
It's called beanpole.
No, beanpole was Richard's. Mine, no, that's right. The giraffe was Richard's. Mine was a beanpole. That's right. Pardon me? psychedelic pattern had leaves on it, which is where the beanpole came from. The giraffe was such a good name, but was already taken, so I couldn't use it. I don't know how many days it took after I met him till we were grinding away, and it was probably less than a month before we had operating telescopes. And I don't know how soon after that Bruce and I were out there showing things to people, but it was something that just evolved. I mean, just immediately happened. We got this telescope. In any other group of people in the world, to say how interesting it is to put a telescope out there and see somebody look at Saturn or the moon and get excited, that would be kind of a mysterious concept. But with you guys, you know what that's about. You know the joy of seeing somebody look at Saturn and jump up and down because they're excited. And that's really special for me tonight. One of the neat things about Pam asking me to come up with some memories is it's caused me to run down memory lane and think of some things that I haven't thought about for maybe 20 years. And I keep time traveling and flashing and nostalgic. One of the neat things that comes up is another name that we haven't been able to track down, Brian Rhodes, who was I presume he still is, a Harley rider and a Harley mechanic, and not the traditional Harley kind of a person that drinks and parties and fights and does all that stuff, but he liked riding Harleys. Salt of the earth kind of guy. And I think it was one of the early Furnace Creek, Death Valley over New Year's Eve trips. We were driving back and John's old Corvair blew a piston in Buttonwillow. And we ended up, we got the car off Highway 5, got it over to Buttonwillow. We'd never known Buttonwillow, it was just a place, it was the nearest place to land. And we found an old abandoned gas station, and Brian and I took the engine apart and put on a new piston and drove back and forth to Bakersfield and got the parts. And I'll never forget that John took that experience with Brian being a partner, that from then on out he could go anywhere in the world. And I think that was a turning point. You know, we had done Death Valley, we'd done Riverside, we'd done all over San Francisco. But I think that was a time when John really started to range a lot farther. And it's fun to kind of think back and see when that changed.
I always felt perfectly safe in Brian's company. No matter what happened, he could fix it. He was the backbone and guts of the Sidewalk Astronomers for years.
He sure was.
And if any of you know where he is, get him out here.
We would like to find him. Oh, let's see the story. Sacramento, Buttonwillow. One of the things that comes to mind is...
They rebuilt that engine in 2 days and we were out of there.
And it was cold. I don't remember who the lady was, but it was somebody that lived at the top of the hill above Jackson and Broderick. And that was a time when the city wasn't quite as peaceful. And she looked down the hill, and if she saw John down there with a telescope and a group of people, she knew that it was perfectly safe to come strolling down the street and go back home.
That's Peter Grubb's sister. Peter Grubbs died falling in the Alps, and that's his sister.
Amazing memory.
I inherited his suit.
Still have it. Oh, let's see. One of the other neat things that's a whole set of memories that I have that I think I'm very lucky to have is in those early years, John and I spent a lot of time hiking on Mount Tamalpais and talking philosophy. And I think I got the early versions and the early evolution of astronomy for children under 80 out there on a 1-to-1 and 1-to-2 basis, and that was really, really very nice and very special. I don't know if anybody else since then has gotten the kind of time with him that I got with him, but it was a very important and very formative time for me. Oh, let's see what else did I want to say. One thing that I wanted to say to all of you guys is I think it's probably difficult for you to understand how gratifying it is for me standing here 27 years after launching a little group with just me and one other fellow and John and getting out there doing something that basically we love to do. Put a telescope out
and get people excited about things and explain things and see the fire light up in their eyes and just have fun. And it's grown. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the biggest assembly of sidewalk astronomers that's ever occurred. If I'm not mistaken. It's terrific that this has continued. I mean, think back to something that you were doing when you were 15 and think about looking at it 30 years later and having it grown into something that's worldwide. It's a little daunting. So that's a thank you from me to you guys. I'm really glad that you guys are here and continuing to do this. It's been said a bunch of different ways, but all of us that have spent any time around John know that if you're interested, he will push you harder than you find comfortable. And that's just who he is. He can't be any different. And one of the things that has given me is I've got this constant push to figure things out and do things better and to do things for people, and that's something that comes from that time that I spent with John doing that.
Now,
So
Jeffrey is a geologist. Jeffrey is a geologist, and I asked him years ago to please arrange it that at the top of the TV tower we have a TV camera gimbaled so that when the city goes down to the earthquake, we'll have the pictures and we can sell it and rebuild the town.
That's true. He did ask me to do that, and the truth is that the camera's up there. They call it the weather cam, and so I think the next time we have an earthquake, we're going to be able to do that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to collect the money to rebuild the town with. But it will be interesting watching the waves going across the city. But what I was about to say was I just really thank you guys for carrying on the tradition, and I'm really glad to have been drawn back in, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. Thanks very much.
John, you've probably been awarded out by now, but we do have one more award that we need to give to you before we have our final speech of the night. And that comes from the Western Amateur Astronomers, and here to present that to you is their president, Mr. Jack Ford.
John, our paths have crossed a long time. I have a telescope in my backyard, and it's called a YOLO. And I don't know that that's after anyone significant. It's named after the county.
After the county?
After the county. And Professor Arthur S. Leonard made the design. Nextly, I want to apologize for this not having reached you sooner. But this actually was struck before I became president. And I think because of your wanderings, I've had difficulty, or the appropriate occasion. There were occasions when you weren't present, when the award was. So it's a little, belated, but I think it's quite apropos. Many things have been said today about you and for you, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure on behalf of the societies that form the Western Amateur Astronomers of the 5 Western states to present the Clyde Tombaugh Award to John Dobson for creative telescope design.
Did you have a few words you wanted to say
come over here.
Did you
Yeah,
have a few words you wanted to say about our other
Oh, yes, that was one thing we have to
deal that we didn't quite get everything finished
Okay.
that we needed to get finished with it.
One thing I just wanted to mention is that some of you heard about the asteroid. Remember? Anybody remember that? No. Okay, Gil Clark has been working on the asteroid project. They're going to name an asteroid after you. And we wanted to have it tonight. Gil wanted to come down and present it to you, but the paperwork took longer than we expected, so it's going to have to wait for Christmas.
Well, that's okay. It's embarrassing enough already.
To close out our parade of speakers here tonight, we have somebody who really wanted to be here but couldn't. And since we couldn't have him in body, we decided we'd have him in voice. And we'd like to play a tape now of a letter that was written. I got to preview it last night, and it was a heck of a speech, so we saved it for last. And it's a few words that are coming from Bruce Sams.
Oh, wow.
If we could play that tape, please.
Dear friends of John Dobson, in honor of John Dobson's birthday, I'd like to highlight some of the excitement and intellectual curiosity that John radiated to me as a youngster, and to tell a few stories about the early days of the Sidewalk Astronomers. I'm honored and delighted. There is much to say of science and philosophy, of mission and purpose, and of course, of love and friendship. As many will surely echo those themes today, I'll try to touch on it all and still remember the 3 B's of speech making. Be brief, be sincere, and be seated. My first encounter with John was a revelation. One night in 1967, my mother heard from a friend of hers that someone with a homemade telescope was giving a free glimpse of the planets out on the street corner of Jackson and Broadway in San Francisco. Minutes later, we stood before a ponytailed man who talked so fast, said so much, and asked such strange questions that my head was spinning. Did I see the Terminator on the moon? In those days, no one had heard of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And what about Cassini's division in Saturn's rings? Did I know what made the night sky dark? And all this punctuated by breathtaking views of the moon, Saturn, and a not-so-dark sky. After an hour, we were hooked. I would try making a 10-inch telescope myself. If that wasn't enough challenge for a 10-year-old, then John surely had one in teaching a 10-year-old in how to make a telescope. Over the next few months, John's steady hand and unswerving drive for simplicity showed me what it meant to really think. We talked about everything: parabolas, paramecium, atomic bombs, and of course about astronomy and philosophy. Those talks stimulated me more than my school classes ever could have, and even though I was too young to truly understand what he said, John made me want to understand the world. And he taught me, by his own powerful example, to stop relying on other people's ideas and voodoo when some common sense and hard question will do a lot better. Building a telescope with John opened my eyes to the physics underlying the everyday world. Why bees hum in the meadow, why rainbows are curved, why Polaroid zaps reflections, why the stars in all the picture books have big diffraction spikes, and much, much more. Including, of course, how to grind, polish, and figure a telescope. In those days, the Dobsonian mount hadn't reached its final design, so we experimented with the mount a little bit, how to best attach the wheels and what made the best side bearings, but ultimately the telescope, a 10-incher, turned out to be a great success. I still use the original telescope and mount today. John must have figured that if he could get me through the mirror-making process, he could do it with anyone, because shortly thereafter he decided to form a club dedicated to making telescopes and educating the public about astronomy and the universe. John, Jeffrey Roloff, and I were the original members. John, of course, really ran and organized the club, which soon took on about 10 or 20 regular members. We called ourselves the Sidewalk Astronomers, revamped the motto of Paladin, a TV gunslinger, from have gun we'll travel to have telescopes we'll travel, and got down to business. We held regular meetings on the steps at Jackson and Broderick on the first Saturday after the first quarter moon, organized lunar eclipse parties, built ever bigger and more colorful telescopes, and dubbed them with ever more fanciful names. We even had a car headlight and a battery on a trolley so we could shoot out the automatic streetlights and win back the dark skies we wanted. John started teaching telescope making courses all over the Bay Area, and as he did so, the club blossomed. As more people joined, John's fame and infamy in the eyes of non-Dobsonian amateurs grew enormously. By the 1970s, sidewalk astronomy had really arrived. John's star parties at Ghirardelli Square became a major attraction, and sometimes with 3 or 4 telescopes going full guns, folks had to wait 15 minutes just to get a peek. It's over 20 years later now, and I'm a professional astronomer. I used Palomar-sized telescopes regularly, but I was never so enchanted by the heavens as on those nights when John showed me the great globular cluster M13, or the faint green and orange glow of the Orion Nebula, and all the while we discussed the universe and relativity, and what the steady state and Big Bang theories meant for life on Earth. And that brings me to the heart of what I want to say in this all too short tribute to John. You see, strangely enough, I don't consider him primarily as a telescope maker, even though that's why he's the most famous. To me, John is, foremost, a uniquely gifted and courageous thinker. His Gedanken experiments are as ceaseless as they are merciless. May God help any flimsy ideas that appear on his intellectual horizon. I recall a Grand Canyon trip in the summer of 1976 when a Krishna consciousness girl accosted us, pinned a flower on John, gave him a book, and proceeded to enlighten him. She got the book, the flower, and a mouthful of Sanskrit quotations back. Later that evening, John lectured tirelessly to the enthusiastic crowds around our bus, and he returned to bed with new questions of his own. And that was then it struck me that he turned the same intellectual powers on himself that he turns on the natural world. He does not abide lazy thinking, particularly not on his own part. John asks why and pushes himself to answer. It is a rare professor indeed who questions fundamental principles so deeply. Once we tried reading the Feynman lectures on physics together and spent 2 whole days digging out the treasures on the first page. I have never met anyone with a surer sense of the essential and the superfluous. But intellect alone could not motivate this great show of respect and honor today. Only a true heart and honest friend could do that. All of you who are lucky enough to be here feel the same personal connection to John. He is commentary, luminary, and above all, he is convincing. Why? Because he believes in what he is doing. Because he gives his all in love and friendship, as in all other things. And so his life illuminates ours. Thank you, John, for your many gifts, and happy birthday.
follow through there and get our cake.